Hello there, World of Tankers. I'm Blitz, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the VK90.01P. Now this is one of the rarest vehicles in the current Tier 10 matchmaker, and the reason for that being is because the last time this tank ever surfaced in the Blitz stores was in the Blitz fair, and it was for a very expensive price tag unless you wanted to gamble on the snow globes. Unfortunately, I never picked it up in the snow globe, so it cost me a very expensive amount of money and a dent in my wallet. But in today's video, the tank has come into crates, so I'm going to be telling you everything you do need to know about the vehicle, the armor profile, the statistics, how it does stack up to some other Tier 10 opponents, and of course whether or not you should be sticking it in your garage. Now of course, since this vehicle is in crates, I can't really give you a defined answer on whether or not you should be spending your money on it, because I personally do not really like the crate design. I do like the charms, but still, gambling your money to try and pick up this vehicle is 100% up to you, so I'm really not going to be talking about whether the crates are worth it or not in this video. So hopefully you do like this type of video. If you do, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, as it does help out the channel so much. We're almost at 15,000 subscribers already, and every single subscribe button really does help out the channel so much for more giveaways and everything else like that. So thank you guys for all the support, but let's get straight into it. Getting into the statistics of this tank, it has some very cool parameters going for it. In my opinion, the VK90 is one of the most balanced vehicles in the game, and you're going to find out why when we do look at these statistics. Now, looking at the base damage per minute of this vehicle, 2,622 is definitely nothing to brag about, but it definitely makes sense. The VK90 is right up there with the Mouse, the VK72, and the E100. It is a big, massive German super heavy, a lot of frontal armor, and you're going to see that when we do pull it up. So it makes sense that it has a very similar DPM to a vehicle like the Mouse, because it also carries a very similar gun dealing the same 460 damage. However, one thing that is not similar is the amazing standard penetration of 275 millimeters. I personally run calibrated on this tank, and if you do pick it up, I would definitely suggest you do. It brings it all the way up to 289 millimeters. Now that's the same as pretty much Tier 10 tank destroyers, so you're easily able to penetrate vehicles like an IS-4 right in the frontal armor. You're able to penetrate an IS-7 literally in the superstructure. It is such a crazy amount of penetration, especially because they are AP shells. You got a lot of shell normalization. It is really just a joy running this tank. You can literally penetrate the frontal turret armor of an E100 with this gun. However, this tank has a very big balancing factor that goes for it, because while you do have an amazing standard penetration, that premium pen of only 320 millimeters, yeah, that's really going to rub some salt in the wounds. When you are going up against a tank, let's say like a Badger, there is no way you are penetrating the frontal armor of a Badger unless you see that tank's lower plate. So there's a really good balancing factor on this tank, in my opinion, where you have something that's really excellent on this vehicle, but it also has something that causes a little bit of a drawback. I personally think that penetration is amazing to run on this vehicle. I barely find myself ever using premium. When looking at the gun handling statistics, with a base aiming time of 2.26 seconds and a dispersion value of 0.335, they definitely aren't something that you want to boast about. You are going to have to run this tank in close quarters combat to really accurately hit your shells, unless you are waiting quite some time to aim them in. However, since this, again, is a German super heavy, I really don't notice the gun being that inaccurate, because I'm always up in the thick of the battle, trying to absorb the shells and deal the damage back. So that's nothing I really do worry about. Dispersion factors on moving and rotating the tank as well are pretty much about in the middle at 0.20. But one really nice dispersion factor on this tank is when rotating the turret. If you're sitting still and you need to aim at somebody else really quickly, you can turn that tank really quick, turn that turret, and your dispersion values when turning that turret are only 0.08. That is excellent. In fact, that is the best out of every single Tier 10 heavy tank in the game, so that is something that's really nice on the tank. As well, it has pretty good after-shot dispersion values. However, with a reload of around 11 seconds with this tank, it really doesn't give you that much of an advantage. Gun angles, you're probably reading this and thinking, 4 degrees of gun depression, that is completely awful, especially for how tall this vehicle is. And yes, while it does only have 4 degrees of gun depression, that is only over the front. Because it is a rear turreted tank, its gun cannot aim lower than the frontal hull armor, which makes sense, it would clip through the armor. So it has 10 degrees of gun depression, but only over the side. This is another really cool balancing factor in my opinion, where it has something that's really good going for it, but it also has something that's really bad. So if you want to use the really good frontal armor on this tank and side scrape with it, you can't use the gun depression. But if you want to shoot people and use your gun depression, well, you have to expose your weaker side armor. So it's something that's sort of like a yin and yang thing. I think it's really cool that this tank has many different attributes going for it, and you always have to constantly work it in every single different scenario you are stuck in. Now this tank is a massive vehicle at that. It weighs 91.64 tons. And with weight definitely comes some restrictions to mobility. It only goes 30 kilometers per hour forward, which is pretty much the same as an E100, a VK72, so that definitely does make sense. However, it also goes 15 in reverse, which is very good. That means that you're easily going to be able to back up, shoot people. Because you are in a rear turreted heavy tank, it really gives you an advantage because you're able to back up really quickly and snap the enemy and go back into position. That's something I really do like. And unlike the E100, this vehicle does not weigh 129 tons. So with the effective power to weight ratio of 10.91, it actually is able to get up to speed, stay at around 25-30 kilometers per hour at pretty much all terrain you are stuck on. That is something that is very nice. And you look at the traverse speed, and I'm actually surprised that the traverse speed is so good on this vehicle. It's sitting at 30.37, but when you think about it, it really does make sense because you have to use your gun depression on this vehicle to be effective in most scenarios. So you want to really quickly be able to turn your tank, use your gun depression, and wiggle it back to make it a very hard tank to penetrate, iron out those weak spots. You want to be able to wiggle it. You want to be able to use your side scraping abilities on this tank very well. And if you had a really slow traverse speed, well, it would probably fall apart very quickly. So I actually think that this is a very good tank all around. After looking at the statistics, you'll see that it has some very good numbers going for it, and at the same time it has some very bad numbers going for it. I personally think that this is one of the most balanced statistical tanks in the game. Looking at the armor profile of the VK90, you can see frontally that this thing has a very large amount of armor going for it. Just talking about the one weak spot, in my opinion, on this tank is the huge lower glacis plate. You can see it's only 228 millimeters thick, which means that if any player has a shot on that lower plate, it will cause you to fall apart. In fact, the reason I lose this game you're watching here on Mines is because of my huge lower plate causing me to be penned very easily. That's one spot that you can 99% of the time penetrate, unless you, of course, you are in a Sheridan using your standard penetration. Looking at the upper plate though, yeah, that's very thick, 350 millimeters, and that's without loading heat shells. If we take a look, that's 384 millimeters thick. That's going to be very hard to penetrate that upper plate. Even premium rounds, some of the best tanks in the game, like an IS-4 running calibrated, are still not going to be penning the upper plate armor on this tank. As well, looking at that turret, you can see the edges of the turret cheeks are pretty much auto ricochets. The only spot you can pen is right on that cheek. And even if you do load heat, you can see that that's a very small target to hit. That gun mantlet's right in the middle. You just wiggle that turret a little bit and it's very tough to penetrate that turret. And one thing I definitely would not suggest to do is over-angle the turret. You can see as soon as you over-angle it, it's very easy to penetrate that turret. And that's one thing I have noticed personally that really causes this tank to downfall, is if, let's say, there's somebody to the left of you and somebody to the right, well, as soon as you turn your turret to shoot at one of them, you can see just a little bit of an angle makes that turret super weak. You compare that to like an E100's turret, and you can see just how much thicker an E100's turret armor is. So that is one really big downfall of this vehicle, in my opinion, is that it really does a bad job dealing with more than one opponent. Looking at that cupola, do not get fooled by it. Yes, it looks like it's sticking right out of water, but it's not weak at all. You can see 300-400 millimeters thick. It's just that little itty bitty bar that you can pen, and that's still 220 millimeters thick. Honestly, shooting at that cupola is the worst mistake you can ever do. It's probably thicker than shooting at an E3. As you can see, the top of it literally auto ricochets. Never shoot at the cupola of that vehicle. It is never going to benefit you. It is such a tough vehicle to try and penetrate through the front. Not to mention, the side armor of this tank is 150 millimeters thick, and because it's rear turreted, and because it's all one flat slate, you can see you can angle this tank. This is an E100 aiming at it. That's a 150 millimeter gun, and it still can barely penetrate the side armor of this vehicle. you can see you can easily expose your gun onto the side of this tank, shoot anybody you want to, and nobody's going to be penning you. Even loading heat shells, you can see it's nearly impossible to penetrate this tank because, of course, heat isn't going to penetrate through tracks. So that's 300 millimeters thick right there of armor. You're not going to be penning that. That upper part is completely impenetrable. So that's what makes this tank such a tough target to go up against. In my opinion, this is the best side scraper in the game because it is just such a hard target to penetrate. If you are in a position like this, nobody in the game will be penning you. Even a 183 will easily ricochet shells right off of your tank. And that's what makes it so deadly. You can see using that gun depression, it becomes even tougher and thicker to penetrate the tank. It's very, very tough. But if you want to get that full 10 degrees out, it does become very easy to pen it, as you can see. So I normally only try and use 8, 9 degrees. Even 7 degrees is fine in my opinion. You can see 7 degrees is a very, very steep angle. But when you're using 4 degrees, it's really tough to shoot people in the front. So I normally try and just angle it, trying to get about 7 degrees out. That usually is enough to work most ridge lines, and it's going to do very, very well aiming down at lower plates and stuff like that on enemy opponents. But I really do think that the VK90 is an excellent tank to run just because of that frontal armor and the ability to side scrape so well in it. You can see that the armor has some very good ups going for it, and as well it has some very, very bad downs going for it. So now that we've gone over the statistics and the armor profile, my personal opinion on this vehicle is it's a very balanced vehicle. In fact, this is one of the most balanced tanks in the entire game, and I'm really glad that it is a premium/collector vehicle, because that means that Wargaming did actually put a balanced vehicle in the game that you can buy. In my opinion, if you buy this tank and you don't know jack squat about the game, you are going to do awful in this tank. There's no way you'll know how to work it, use the gun depression, side scrape correctly in it, use your armor well. There is no way you'd know how to use it. It has a lot of good things going for it, but at the same time, it has a lot of drawbacks. So I personally love this vehicle because it requires a lot of skill to play, but if you know how to play it well, you can do really, really well in it, as you saw there. Unfortunately, we did lose there to Israel Fatness, a very good game played by him in his Object 140, but we were still able to get out 7,300 damage. That is literally the second game I played in the tank tonight. It was a very, very lucky game I pulled out, so I'm very, very happy I was able to get that game in the first place, but it really showed all of the abilities of the tank. You could see on mines when I was up on the hill, I was using the gun depression, angling it just that little bit to shoot the enemy without exposing the weaker sides of my tank. I bounced a lot of shells, blocked over 3,000 damage. You saw me side scraping on the rock against the Yag Tiger and the 183. The 183 ricocheted off me, and the Yag Tiger didn't even bother to shoot at me because my armor is so thick on the tank. So overall, it's a very, very well played tank if you know how to play it. But in my opinion, I just want to say this, if you're not great at the game and you've been waiting to buy the next overpowered tier 10 premium to come into the game, like the T22 medium or the Mark 6, this is definitely not your cup of tea, especially because it is in crates. Even with the charms, I definitely would not suggest to try and get it. Now, if you are a crazy collector like me, you will not be disappointed in this vehicle, but as I said, I am no longer going to be voicing my opinion on crates because I don't think that crates should be in the game. As much as I don't want to see 5,000 of these running on the battlefield, I still think it's more fair that everybody has to pay the same price tag for a tank, other than somebody can spend $5 on a vehicle and get it, and somebody can spend $200 on a tank and not get it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you like this type of tank, if you like this video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Hit that like button down below if you did like it. If you didn't like this video, well, you know what to do. Let me know why you didn't like it. Let me know some big criticism. I like criticism. But other than that, guys, I hope you're all doing well out there. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.